AFR Talk.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. Listen to Free for All Friday. Talk about anything that's been in the news this past week. Here's another story about sticker shock, by the way, from Seattle, KING TV. They interview a guy by the name of Eric Levy, and he thought his current insurance plan was too expensive, so he jumped online to the Washington Health Benefit Exchange, and the sticker shock for a comparable plan was even worse. It's another $500 a month that you have to think about how you're going to pay for. What's worse is paying for coverage he doesn't need. The real thing that jumped out at me is all of a sudden I'm required to have maternity coverage. I mean, this is the insanity of government-run health care. This guy is a single guy. He's young. He's incapable of having a child. It's impossible for him to have a child. He doesn't have a wife who might need it, and it would apply just to her, not to him. He is forced to pay for maternity coverage as a single guy. I mean, that's what's just absolutely absurd, and it's costing him $500 a month because all of these coverages are mandated. You have to have a policy that includes all of these treatments, whether you want them, need them, or they even apply to you or not. It's just completely absurd. Rube Goldberg machine doesn't even begin to cover it. You know, our last caller at the end of the last hour was talking about the rhetoric, and Jeff played the audio at the beginning of the program today in the opening tease. President Obama talking about not negotiating with people that have guns to their heads. You got Jay Carney and other spokesmen out there talking about suicide bombers with bombs strapped to their chest, and we're not going to negotiate with people that have bombs strapped to their chest. And remember, back in 2011, they could not stop talking about the fact that this is the reason Gabby Giffords got shot. She got shot because of all this unhinged rhetoric and all these unhinged metaphors about gun violence and explosives. Well, they're just throwing these terms around like candy. Now, Sheila Jackson Lee, clip 5, this was on the Hill yesterday. This was right in the middle of this event with the shooting. And remember, the woman, it turns out that the woman that was killed by the police, they're saying she was unarmed. Ladies and gentlemen, she was in a car driving 80 miles an hour. A car is a lethal weapon. She was not unarmed. She was driving a lethal weapon. People get killed every day being run over by automobiles, and she was completely out of control. They had to stop her. They had to use lethal force to do it to protect the innocent citizens. Well, it turns out the reason she attacked the White House, apparently she thought President Obama was stalking her. That's the reason she went after the White House. Now, how are you going to blame that on the Republicans? Now, here is Sheila Jackson Lee. Before knowing anything about this woman, about her motive, she blames it on John Boehner. Let's listen.
Speaker, two heroes of mine, World War II veterans, Representative John Dingell and Senator Robert Dole, plainly said that piecemeal or partial spending plans do not adequately ensure that our veterans are served or protected. I have in my hand today a letter from the Majority Leader, Mr. Reid, who I thank him for his service, and a letter from our leadership, Democratic leadership here in the House. It simply pleads with the Speaker of this body, rather than piecemeal the American dream, rather than respond in a way that leaves 8,000 federal employees unemployed. And God knows the tragedy of this poor person who came on the Hill in a black car. No one knows what would drive this person to do this. But what I would say to you is, let's get our wheels back on, serve the American people, bring them back, vote for a bill today that will open the government. I will stay here until we get that bill on the floor. Piecemeal is undeserving of America.
All right, a couple of things there. She only brings up this shooting to try to pin it on the Republicans. Why else would she insert that in the middle of a 1-minute speech? Has absolutely nothing to do with health care, nothing to do with the shutdown, nothing to do with the debt ceiling, nothing to do with the budget. She doesn't, and she admits she doesn't even know why this person did what she did, but she's going to find some way to pin it on John Boehner and the Republicans. So these people are just completely unhinged. And when she talks about we can't do this thing piecemeal, this is how, I said this yesterday, this is how we have always done budgets in the United States Congress. They have always been done one part of the budget at a time, one piece of the budget at a time, one portion of the federal government at a time. Typically, this is before Harry Reid stopped obeying the law and stopped producing budgets altogether. Remember, they've got a legal obligation to produce a budget every year. That's not an option. That's not recommended. That is a statutory obligation. They are breaking the law not to do it. Harry Reid hadn't produced one single budget in 5 years now. And the way it typically was done back when we had adults running the United States Senate is you would have up to 12 separate appropriations bills. So you'd have a bill for the military and a bill for that part of the government, bill for that. Everybody would debate it. They would discuss it. They would look at the figures. They would decide on what they thought was an appropriate figure, and then they would vote. And then that appropriations bill, 1 out of 12, would get sent to the president for his signature. And so this is the way it's always been done. Now the Democrats are impugning that process only because they haven't produced a budget in 5 years. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Let's go to Leanna in Ponca City, Oklahoma. Leanna, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for having me on. I'd like to speak to the World War II memorial being closed, and my first thought is we know Obama bows down to the Muslims and coddles them, and Benghazi is an example of trying to hide things. But my thoughts are this is a lot more spiritual than people understand, because the World War II veterans are the ones who stepped on the snake's head and saved God's people, the Jewish people.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. And, he obviously has, Leanna, the same kind of antipathy for Judaism and for Jews and for the nation of Israel that he has for Christians and for Christianity. If you've ever seen the series Band of Brothers, it's a powerful, powerful HBO series. Tom Hanks. In fact, why don't we grab that Tom Hanks clip number 3, if we can, Rob. Tom Hanks put that together to honor the ordinary men that took Europe and Western civilization back from the Nazis. And it's a powerful, powerful series. The most moving segment in that series was when they stumble on a concentration camp and they see these emaciated Jews, nothing but skin and bones. They see piles of bodies. They pick up the stench of burning bodies. And the title of that segment was very simply, Why We Fight. Now, you want a powerful, powerful thing, bring tears to your eyes. It'll get you all clutched up inside. This is why we fight. This is what a Christian civilization does. This is what a Christian army does. It goes to war to protect liberty, to protect the sanctity of life. And it's a powerful thing, but President Obama does not seem to have any respect for the veterans that took the beaches in World War II. And that's why you're right on point, Leanna. And that's why he's only picking the World War II memorial. I mean, it's just odd to me that he's picking this thing. And he's barricading it and strapping the barricades together with wires. And again, I think it has to do with his friendliness toward all things Islam and his hostility, even hatred, for all things Christian and all things Jewish. All right, thank you for that call, Leanna. Let's grab clip number 3. This is Tom Hanks. Now, it shows a little bit of cluelessness here, but listen to Tom Hanks talking about the veterans that stormed the World War II memorial this week.
Well, one of the reasons I ask you is because you did the Pacific, and it was about the war in the Pacific.
What's that got to do with the shutdown?
I'm asking because the World War II memorial is shut down right now.
Well, haven't they all shut down?
They're all shut down, but the veterans
Is it the
actually
National Park shut down?
Yep.
Okay,
and the veterans actually broke the blockade.
Good for the veterans. Good. Go see it. They should. We should all have access to them all the time. Sorry that they didn't have it.
And looking at your film,
did they assault it with helicopters, landing craft? Did they bust through in a Jeep? How did they do it exactly?
I think they actually had some help from congressmen, and
Good.
they pulled up the blockade and walked right through.
We should all have access to our national monuments and parks. It's simple as that.
Well, there you go, Tom. Don't say that to us. You need to say that to your good buddy, Barack Obama. We all ought to have access. Good for the vets, good for the Republican congressman that opened the way for those vets to go to the memorial. 888-589-8840. Let's go to David, Jackson, Mississippi. David, if we can bring David in. Oh, welcome, David. Focal Point, Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Yes, I had a comment and then a question about the ObamaCare.
Yes, sir.
And first of all, comment is appreciate you referring it to ObamaCare. I've noticed the last several days the liberal media's changed it to now affordable Health Care Act. They don't want to have Obama own up to. He spent over a year and a half of his presidency
you're right.
Ran that through Congress, finally got it through, and now he himself wants to refer to it as the Affordable Health Care Act.
That's right.
ObamaCare.
And remember, he was happy to own it. Yeah, I'm happy to have it called Obamacare because I care. Now he doesn't want to be anywhere near this thing. It's the Affordable Care Act. The media's cooperating. They won't attach his name to this if they can possibly help it. Anyway, go ahead, David.
Yeah, so keep calling Obamacare or the Unaffordable Health Care Act. But my question is, if Congress has not okayed any funding, government funds, and if that's why we're having the shutdown, then why is not Obamacare shut down? Why is that trying to be up and running?
Well, and I talked about this yesterday, David, and it's a great question. Thanks for your call. And the reality, the correct answer to David's question is that if we were still operating under the authority of the Constitution of the United States, there would be no exchanges operating today. There would be no Obamacare. There would be no navigators that haven't been trained or clueless, can't help anybody. There would be no website to go to even for you to get clutched up. Wouldn't exist because Congress, the spending authority of the federal government ended on September 30th. That's when its authority to spend money ended. It has no authority to spend money after September 30, other than in the agreement that was made by Congress back in 1995 and 1996. They anticipated a day like this, and they said, okay, we're going to continue to fund Social Security in a case like this. We will continue to fund Medicare. Medicare reimbursements will go out. Social Security checks will go out. And the military that we need to protect our national security, they will continue to be paid. All essential functions of government that protect life, liberty, and property, those functions of government, they will continue to be funded even in a shutdown. But Obamacare is not on that list. Obamacare never was included in that list. So it should not even be operational today if we were still a constitutional republic. Sadly, it looks like we may not be. Those days may be over. We need to work to get them back. Focal Point AFR Talk, right back after the news.
American Family Radio.
AFR Talk.
I'm Fred Jackson, News Director for American Family News, and we're the American Family Association. We feature breaking stories as well as the challenges facing Christians in today's society on the radio and at onenewsnow.com.
Fighting to restore the moral foundations of American culture. The American Family Association, AFA.net.
We are the American Family Association.
Faith, family, freedom.
American Family Radio, AFR Talk.
A ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The partial government shutdown is in its fourth day and seems no closer to ending. House Speaker John Boehner says an administration official shouldn't have said it doesn't matter how long the shutdown will last because the administration feels it is winning.
Well, this isn't some game. The American people don't want their government shut down, and neither do I.
Boehner says the president needs to be willing to negotiate.
I reminded the president the other night that he's famous for saying, well, in a negotiation, nobody gets 100% of what they want. We're not going to get it in this one either.
Many people are wondering just how much longer it will be before the government shutdown ends. Phil Kerpen of American Commitment says it may be a few weeks or longer.
The Democrats have decided that they can gain political advantage from refusing to negotiate and refusing to pass any bills in the Senate. And I think as long as they maintain that posture, we're not really going to make any progress towards resolving this. I don't think this is going to be one of those short ones like we used to have a lot in the 80s that were just a couple of days. I think it's going to be more like what happened in 95, 96, where it was 3 weeks or whatever it ended up being.
The federal government shutdown could last for days or even weeks because lawmakers from both parties in politically safe districts have no reason to compromise.
State legislatures have consistently gerrymandered districts to protect House Democrats and Republicans, making it easier for them to be reelected and to be less inclined to compromise on issues in Washington. In the past, congressional leaders were able to craft bipartisan solutions from the political center, but now far more House members come from firmly conservative or firmly liberal districts, and any straying from the ideological path could cost them their seats in the next primary. Tim McGuire, Washington.
A Christian educator says California must rein in its truancy crisis, but it's not a problem that can be solved without the family unit.
An estimated 1 million elementary students were absent in California schools last year, and educators are concerned the number means an increase of crime and poverty. The State Attorney General's office released a report that shows most students absent in schools are truant because of family issues, safety concerns, or are the targets of bullying. The report collected information from roughly 500 schools, nonprofit groups, and education officials in the state. Finn Larson of Christian Educators Association International.
Clearly, students that are truant excessively in elementary school are heading towards high school dropout. I mean, there's certainly no doubt about it.
The California Department of Education found that almost 30% of students in public schools were truant from the 2011 to 2012 school year. The report detailed that to be smart on crime, truancy must be reduced.
I would suggest that the core issue is in the family. And it's not something we can expect schools to solve on their own. It's not something we could expect social services to solve on their own.
I'm Becky Ye.
A troubled abortionist in Birmingham, Alabama has received another very firm no from a local judge. AFN's Charlie Butts reports it's the same clinic where 3 abortion patients were rushed to hospital emergency rooms in one day after having abortions.
The clinic owned by Diane Dursey says New Woman All Women in Birmingham, and the abortionist is Bruce Norman. A court ordered the clinic to shut down after inspectors found over 70 pages of health and safety violations. Attorneys asked the same court for reconsideration. Dana Cody of Life Legal Defense Foundation tells AFN Judge Joseph Buaker issued this ruling.
It was very short and to the point, no explanation, motion denied, so that clinic remains permanently enjoined from providing abortions, which in essence means it's shut down because during testimony at the trial about the permanent injunction, the abortionist admitted that that's all he did there.
Cody adds the clinic could stay open but not provide abortions. And Norman could appeal the ruling, which Cody considers likely. But
if it was me at this point, I would be embarrassed. I mean, they've got health code violations that have never been corrected. It's absolutely appalling that with the history of this case that they persist.
But if they do appeal, Life Legal Defense Foundation will be on the case. Norman also terminates the lives of preborn babies in a Jackson, Mississippi clinic where there was a recent medical emergency, and the foundation is working with pro-lifers there.
For American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh.
Yes, we need revival. But what can one person do?
Turn.
In humble repentance from every sin God reveals to you.
Pray.
With urgency for spiritual recovery and awakening.
Unite.
With other believers in spreading the hope of Christ-centered revival. Visit onecry.com and find ideas for spreading the word. Host a prayer meeting. Write a letter to the editor. Use social media to present revival truth. And much more. onecry.com.
Revival begins with you.
Let us pray. Have mercy upon us, O God, and save us from the madness.
You think Democrats want to keep the government shut down? Politically, absolutely. The way it's supposed to work is that people can choose between several different price plans, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. But if none of those work for you, President Obama actually introduced a few other plans. The cement plan, it makes it legal for you to take someone else's medication if they feel like they're done with it. The wood plan, with that one, the doctor just looks at you and goes, it's probably nothing. Next we have the whatevs plan. That's where a cashier at Walgreens guesses what's wrong with you.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.